If you have a business and you're wondering what kind of sales targets you should be reaching for to meet certain profitability targets, or if you're wondering how profitable your business is on, say, a given sale, or what your break-even point is, then stick around because I've got a tool here that I'll be walking through for you. Okay, so what we're in here now is this is a profitability tool that we've put together. It's based off of what's called a cost volume profit analysis, which looks at your costs and your sales volume, and it looks at the profit implications, looking at the dynamics between the two. So taking a step back, again, purpose of this tool is just recognizing that a lot of people get into business because they're good at what they do, they're good at their craft, good at their trade, and so they start a business, and as the business grows and scales, they start to bump into challenges that are more related to business operations and less, as far as the ability to do their craft and trade. So what this is hopefully a tool that you can use to fine-tune a little bit more your pricing, look at the dynamics between your pricing and your costs, and then also get a good sense of what types of revenues you should be aiming for, how many projects or units, whatever it is that you might need to sell in order to achieve a desirable profit level. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll dive into this a little bit here. There's 4 sections that I'll orient you to as we're looking through this spreadsheet here. They're highlighted in green. There's your product service price, your variable costs, your fixed costs, and then your sales volume analysis. Okay, and the whole analysis is kind of primarily in this box over here. But then you also have some additional summary information at the bottom there. So we'll start with your product or service price. So let's just say you've got a company, it's a contract company, you specialize in doing, say, bathroom renovations, and say the average one that you do is about $20,000. So again, when we're dealing with the numbers here, we're going to be looking at some like summary level numbers, some averages, right? We have a much more detailed version of this available if you have like multiple type products or services that you would offer. But for the purpose of this walkthrough, it's just a simple tool here. So $20,000 for, say, like your average bathroom reno, and then we'll plug in what are called variable costs. So what are variable costs? Variable costs are costs that your business incurs when you do work. Okay, so when you perform work or make a sale, you're going to have costs that are directly associated with that sale that you would otherwise not incur if you had no sales. Okay, so if you did no business whatsoever, no sales, those would be the costs that you don't incur. So some examples, obviously materials, right? So say here maybe you have like $8,500 in materials for this bathroom reno. Maybe labor, maybe you've got some contract labor in there, so maybe that's like $2,500, and then maybe you have some people on payroll that are also working on site, so that's another $2,500. So again, people that are working for you that would not be working if you did not have these sales, materials that you would not purchase if you were not doing this particular project, and then maybe maybe you got like permit fees or whatever that go in there as well that you would not be paying for if you did not have the project. So then what you end up with at the end of the day is what's called a contribution margin. And the contribution margin is the amount of profit from this activity, from your sales activity, that contributes towards covering your fixed expenses and your profit. Okay, so you take your price amount here from your bathroom renovation, you subtract your variable costs, gives you your contribution margin. That is the amount that contributes to your fixed costs and your overhead. So let's look at fixed costs here. So on the fixed cost front, these are going to be expenses that you have regardless of whether or not you have sales activity. Okay, a classic one is going to be rent. Maybe you pay $2,500 a month for some office space or for some warehouse space or something. Depending where you are, that could be pretty cheap. But that you're going to be paying for that one way or another, regardless of whether or not you have sales, right? Maybe you have insurance, right? You got an insurance expense. Maybe that's another $1,000 a month. Maybe you pay $500 a month in advertising. Again, expenses, fixed costs are the costs that you have that you're incurring regardless of your sales activity. Okay, subscriptions, that's going to be software maybe that you have subscriptions for, maybe $450 a month there. And then you have some office expenses, just like miscellaneous type office expenses maybe. And then maybe you've got somebody working in the office who you're paying them regardless of whether or not you have jobs to support the functioning of your business, right? So maybe you got $6,000 of salary there. And so your total fixed costs in a month might be $10,800 in this particular example, okay? So again, you've got your sales price there, your variable costs, which again are the costs that you incur when you have sales, gets you your contribution margin of $6,200, which is the amount available after you do a sale that will cover your fixed costs, okay? And that's what these are over here. So in this example, we're looking at fixed costs of $10,800 per month. And so as you probably noticed, as I was plugging in some of these values, you start to have numbers populating over here. Okay, so now let's look at what these numbers mean over here. Up here, your total profit analysis, your number of items, your target sales for preferred profit, which we'll look at that in a minute here, is 1.74. Essentially, that's your break-even point because we don't actually have any preferred profit entered in this blue cell here, which we will look at in a second. So essentially, this is your break-even point, but let's look at break-even here a minute because that's effectively what we're looking at. Essentially, with your fixed costs that we just looked at, your $10,800 a month, given this profitability analysis, when you do a job, you will need to do 1.74 jobs in a month to cover your fixed costs, okay, to essentially break even. That's the number of jobs. And of course, generally you're kind of doing total jobs, like entire jobs. You're not going to quote a 0.74 of a job. So you kind of round that up, right? Basically, you need to be doing about 2 per month to break even there. So you're looking at about $34,838 in revenue in order to break even to cover your fixed costs, okay? This is a bit of a forecast of what the results would look like. So you're looking at $34,838 in revenue. Then you subtract your total variable costs, okay? So these are going to be your variable costs that are over here times your 1.74 jobs, right? Gets you to $10,800 in contributed earnings. Okay, that's your contribution margin times your 1.74 jobs that you need to do, and then you subtract your fixed costs there. 10,800 gets you to total forecasted profit of 0, because again, 0 is your break-even point. You're basically making $0 at that point. So now let's take a look at what happens when you want to plug in a desired profit amount. Okay, so let's say you want to be making $15,000 a month from your business. Okay, so that's what you want to be pulling out. So you plug that into your preferred profit cell here, and then it adjusts these amounts for you. Okay, and so essentially these are still going to be the same, your break-even points, because that's getting you to $0 of profit, and that's before overhead. But what this does is it adjusts the value so that you can account for the additional profit that you want to be able to pull out. And so now you're looking at, to get $15,000 a month of profit that you can pull out as the owner, you're looking at basically just over 4 jobs a month. Okay, so between 4 or 5 jobs a month. So if you wanted to benchmark that a little bit, right? If you're like going about your business and you're like, okay, how are we doing? The question would be, are we roughly doing 4 and 5 jobs a month would be the question there, right? And so you've got your 15,000 there, so that's kind of what it's looking like. So here's the forecasted results here. By doing 4 to 5 jobs a month, 4.16 jobs a month, you're looking at total revenue of $83,000 per month. Total variable cost, $57,425, gets you to total contributed earnings. Again, these are the earnings to contribute to your overhead, your fixed overhead, and your profit, which is what we determined over here, right? So that's going to be $25,800, which is a combination of this amount, your total fixed cost, plus your profit. So then you subtract your fixed costs, that leaves you with your profit, okay? And so that's how you can plug in and see what types of sales volumes you might be needing to strive for in order to meet profitability targets in your business. Now, let's say if you want to kind of ballpark how much work you should be doing in a given day, let's say you've got 4 weeks in a month and you got 5 days per week that you're working. So roughly 20 days that you're operating in a given month. Now you sort of have like a daily amount here, okay? So in a given day, you should be trying to bill out or earn as a company $4,161, okay? This is, you need to be doing basically 0.2 or 1/5 of a job, right? So if you're looking at trying to, that's essentially like a job a week, right? So if you're getting 20% of the job done per day, then in a given week, you should be turning over a bathroom reno. Everybody knows this doesn't necessarily go that quick. There's always things that kind of hold these things up. Again, this shows you total number of units you need to sell. And what else is it going to show you here? Okay, right, the tax amount. Okay, so looking at the tax amount here, so you want to be able to account for the tax implications as well. So let's say you've got a 25% effective tax rate, so you plug that in here. This is going to change what your net profit that you take home will look like. Okay, so if we back that out here, you'll see there's obviously no tax on this tax line, but if you add in the tax rate, say 25% effective tax rate, now you've got a net profit amount after tax. This is the amount of cash in hand theoretically that you would have. And so here you can start to plug in some different amounts, because if you're like, no, I want like $15,000 after tax, right? So maybe you need to start plugging in some numbers and see how that falls, right? So maybe, yeah, basically sitting at $20,000, right, will get you to $15,000 of net profit after tax at, say, an estimated tax rate of 25%. So again, there's some assumptions baked into this that would remain constant, right? I mean, obviously, as you start to take out more profit from the company, this estimated tax rate is going to go up. And so you should speak with your accountant about your specific tax rate that you should be anticipating at particular income levels, okay? But you can plug that in there, just kind of ballpark what you can be anticipating for net cash in hand based on certain profit targets. So a crash course for sure in what's called the cost volume profit analysis. But what it does is it helps you understand your pricing, your costs, how that helps cover your overhead, fixed costs that you're going to incur anyways in a given month. And then it helps you understand what kind of sales volume you need. Now, one last thing I wanted to point out as we're looking at this is just the dynamic as it comes to your pricing. Okay, so if you're looking at this and you're like, okay, I can't necessarily do 4 projects in a month. That's maybe too much. Maybe you need to look at your pricing, right? So maybe let's adjust pricing to 22,000 instead of 20,000, right? Now you're like just over 3 projects in a month. You can actually get the same results, right? And so you can start to play with this number and just see what might be required to achieve the same results, okay? Now, of course, you know, as you start to bump up your pricing, you're going to start to decrease the potential jobs that you'll win, especially if you're part of like a competitive tender type process with your business. And so you need to be mindful of that, right? But sometimes having less work is okay so long as the work that you are doing is priced at a level that's higher, so your volume may be lower, but you're still bringing in the same kind of profit, okay? So then that's what we saw here. So say $20,000, right? You're having to do 4.16 jobs per month in order to pull out the 15,000. Again, that's before tax because we took that out there. But if we put the jobs up to 22,000, right? Yeah, on the price front here, now we only have to do 3.15 jobs per month in order to hit that $15,000 profit target per month. And so you can really play with your pricing here, you know, even 22,500, right? Now we're dipped below 3 projects per month, right? 2.97, simply by bumping up the price even by $500. So you can play with the pricing a little bit, but then you can also play with, you know, your variable costs, right? Because these will increase as you do more and more sales. And so, you know, maybe you can negotiate better pricing on some of your contracts or some of your materials. Sometimes you have no choice in that, right? And we saw over the last few years here how sometimes these material costs can go up significantly, right? But one thing to consider, lots of times when a business is starting out, having variable costs is not a bad idea because you won't incur them if you are not doing a lot of sales. When you're starting your business, you're not doing a lot of sales initially, and so it's nice to have variable costs because you're not paying for something regardless of whether or not you're actually doing work. But as you start to grow and you do more revenue, these variable costs start to really eat at your bottom line. And so that's where you may want to think, okay, I have been hiring contract labor for these projects for a long time. There might be merit in considering maybe hiring somebody full-time. And so that's going to be a fixed expense that you might have, just a salaried expense where that person is working for you, but then your price per job comes down, right? Different things to play around with. I hope that was kind of a helpful walkthrough just to get you thinking about your pricing, your costs, how that impacts your profitability, how to forecast out the types of or the numbers of projects or jobs or units or even your sales levels as far as revenue perspective goes in order to cover your fixed costs and in order to draw out the profit that you want, okay? If you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out. We have our contact information in the description below here. There's also a link in the description below where you can go to and download your own version of this. You can download it for free, and then you can just work through this on your own and play around with your pricing and your costs and get a sense of what you need to forecast out for revenues to hit specific target profit levels.